Hi, I'm doing something very different, if you can't tell already. I have this deal with myself that I turn the camera on and I talk when I feel the itch. And usually what that means is I put the camera over there and I already have a point that I would like to arrive at. And, it will be like how I interpret Noah and the flood, or how I interpret the atonement, or maybe I want to laugh about a Book of Mormon video or something. So usually it's very condensed. And I know some of you are probably laughing at that because if there's one criticism that I get on my channel, it's that my videos are never condensed enough, and that I blabber and that I make no sense, and whatever. So I'm gonna lean into that today. I'm gonna make probably my blabberiest, most nonsensical, esoteric-ist video that I've ever made, because I'm actually not starting with a point that I would like to arrive at. I have an idea, a few different threads that I would like to try to tie together, but I don't know if they'll tie together in the way that I want them to, and I just kind of want that to happen live, even though it's not live. I'm going to be working on this video for a couple of days, so there are going to be a whole bunch of continuity errors. So the lights will change, the time of day will change, what I'm wearing will change, the camera angles will change, everything's going to change as I'm just trying to kind of work through this, and I'm going to turn the camera on every time new ideas come to me and just fit it into the video where it fits. So I should mention, I'm going to be spoiling an episode of Black Mirror called Men Against Fire. It's season 3, episode 5. Go watch it. Leave this video and watch it. Every episode stands alone. There's no necessity to watch any of the episodes that come before that one. You can just jump straight to that one and check it out. And then when you do, come back to this one, because this is going to be like the Plato's Cave version of that episode. So yeah, sure, you'll get all the points, but it won't hit, and you won't go on the wild ride that episode takes you on. And it's pretty awesome. I would hate to ruin that for somebody. So go watch that episode. I'm going to watch it right now. And I'm going to think, and I'm going to try and tie a whole bunch of things together that hopefully make sense. And this should be fun. I'm very excited about this. So bye. All right, summary time. So I'm going to start the summary by saying this. The title of this episode comes from a book by the same name. And the meaning behind the title, Men Against Fire, is referring to the fact that in World War II, with, the fate of, the world essentially on these soldiers, 15 to 20% of them actually fired their weapons. Or in other words, these men are against firing. The episode opens as we meet our protagonist named Spike, who is getting onto a caravan with his military unit. We also meet another character who will be very important throughout this episode. Her name is Hunter. The caravan is headed to a small village where there has been a report of a robbery committed by something called roaches. We will get to what roaches are later. The villagers explain that a lot of food has been taken from their storehouses and that no one is willing to eat the food that's left over because the roaches have touched it. So the captain gets a small group and they go in the direction of what they think might be a roach safe house. While inside, Spike comes across 3 roaches. Spike shoots one roach and wrestles the other one, eventually killing it with his knife, while a third one slips away. During that fight, the roach keeps aiming some sort of weird defensive flashlight thing at Spike, which he picks up out of curiosity after the battle. He looks into it and immediately starts having a ringing in his ears and seems very disoriented. Hi, sorry, I interrupt the summary with an important announcement / question from the future. I'm kind of getting stuck on the metaphor of this green flashlight, because if you've watched the episode, this green flashlight is like the thing that unlocks his brain so that he can perceive the world a different way. And I've been thinking about that really hard as it relates to my experience leaving the church. When I was like 6 months into leaving the church, I was lucky enough to be working with a super, super close friend who was also going through the same questions that I was. And so we would go warm up our lunches every day, head out to one of our cars, and we would just talk outside about what was going on and how we were dealing with our families. And could it really be that we were raised to believe something that wasn't true? Like, it was so confusing. And we both went through these stages where it was like, the church is true and the church is good. And then you learn something that's not true. And you say, the church is 90% true and the church is all good. And then you learn 20 more things. And you say, the church is 10% true and the church is good. And then you start to say, the church might not be true, but at least it's still good. And until you're faced with, it's not true and it's not good. What am I supposed to do about that? I remember we got really stuck on, we were outside and we were just like, so do we just take our kids up to the mountain and take them to a river and baptize them one day? Like, just in the name of like unaffiliated Jesus? Like, how are we supposed to act? Because our behavior has always been tied to this thing. I remember we were thinking, why are we able to leave? Why are we able to even question these things that we're not supposed to be allowed to question? And our family won't. What's different about us? What's different about our experience? What's different about the way that our minds work? That this green flashlight, for, to use the metaphor, is working on us and it's not working on any of the people around us. And so I've thought a lot about that over the years. And now I'm watching this episode and I'm seeing the green flashlight again. And I'm thinking, what does it represent? Is it the ability to look inward and doubt yourself? Is it intellectual humility? Two things. I'm very curious about this. In the comments, answer one of these two questions. What was it about your Mormon experience, or the way that you think you are, or something that happened in your life or your family or whatever? What was it about that made it so that you could eventually step away from the Mormon church? No, not step away from the Mormon church. At what point did you feel like you had permission to look at things that you weren't supposed to look at in terms of anti-Mormon literature? Okay, that's my first question. And then my second question is more direct. What do you think this green flashlight represents? I'm very curious about what those answers are. And we're back to the summary. That night, Spike has a very glitchy sex dream. I really can't think of another way to say this. He wakes up the next morning and is training with Hunter as she jokingly asks him how well he slept that night. It's probably worth mentioning here that the sex dreams in this episode are probably some form of motivation or reward system, which is possible because of an implant that all of the soldiers have in their brains. Up till this point, we have known that the soldiers have some sort of telecommunication device that allows them to see holograms or building plans during strategy sessions in the middle of combat, but it now seems as though maybe the system is controlling more than just holograms. After some target practice with Hunter, it becomes blatantly obvious that Spike is not doing okay mentally. It becomes obvious that he is also physically unwell. He's not able to complete the required number of push-ups and is sent to the doctor for a scan. The doctor scans his mass system, as it's called, and says that he's all clear, but sends him on to the psychologist just to be safe. The psychologist explains to him that all of his scans look normal and he should be happy because he just killed 2 roaches. The psychologist does prescribe him what he calls a quote good night's sleep, which ends up being just a really crazy glitchy sex dream again. In the morning, Spike and a few other soldiers head to a building which they think will be another roach hideout. The commander is quickly killed and Spike's mass system completely shuts down. He follows Hunter into the building as she begins to chase a group of roaches. However, at this point, Spike's equipment is malfunctioning so much that the roaches no longer look like scary monsters anymore. Hunter is trying to kill the roaches and Spike knocks her unconscious and helps them escape, thinking that they are just civilians. During the drive back, Spike becomes unconscious due to blood loss and wakes up in the Roach's underground hut. She explains to Spike that the implant in his brain dehumanizes them, making them look like monsters. Spike is confused because the villagers at the beginning of the episode seem to have the same hate for the Roaches as the soldiers do. The woman explains that the media has dehumanized them to such a degree that they have all been ostracized from society. At this point, Hunter has regained consciousness and is now tracking down Spike's whereabouts. She finds him in the underground hut and kills both of the Roaches. She takes Spike back to the military compound, but he now finds himself in a white padded cell with the psychologist again. The psychologist explains that the military was having a hard time getting soldiers to fire their weapons because of the overwhelming feeling of human empathy and compassion towards other human beings. He says it's a good thing that humans don't want to kill other humans, unless the future depends on wiping out your enemy. He then explains that the math system is designed to scan for higher levels of disease, cancer, below average intelligence. The math system then makes these people look like scary monsters so that the soldiers have an easier time pulling their triggers. Alright, so if you have watched up till this point in the video and you've never been Mormon and don't even know how this video really goes with a Mormon YouTube channel at this point, let me just make this about everybody really quick, because the topics that we're about to discuss are so broad that you can literally label any two groups and talk about them in this context. And so that's what we're going to do today. We could make this about conservatives and liberals. We could make this about Mormons and ex-Mormons, or we could make this about atheists and theists. The principles here are pretty eternal, for lack of a better word. So I'm moving on to a bit of research by Jonathan Haidt. Now, these are Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations, and what the essential theory behind them is that all human beings value the same 5 things. However, different groups value these different 5 things in different orders, and that's where you get these huge disagreements. So what are the 5 traits? Well, there's care and harm, there's fairness, there's loyalty, there's authority, and there is purity. So I'm now putting a graph on the screen that you can see that puts a political spectrum on the bottom, and then the amount of emphasis that different political orientations or ideologies put on these 5 traits. The left side is very liberal and the right side is very conservative. And what you see on the left side, that liberals tend to value care/harm and fairness much higher than the other 3 traits. While if you scoot over to the right side, you see that conservatives tend to value all of these things more or less equally. So what does that tell us about roaches and about Mormons and about ex-Mormons and about liberals? What does that tell us about all these groups? Well, it tells us that we're not as different as we think we are. That's the first thing. The second thing it tells us, and this is now maybe more of a Mormon bend to it, although I could see how this is related to other things. I'm speaking to the ex-Mormons in the crowd right now. So this is my message to ex-Mormons. We always say that I remember saying this so many times right after I left the church, and I remember hearing a lot of other people saying it. Essentially trying to make the point that we, as ex-Mormons, we know how Mormons feel. We know what it's like to love that religion that much. But Mormons don't know how we feel. And that's true. That is true. And and it's just logically true. I'm not making a big stink about it. It's just we've loved that religion and then we've left. And they're still in the phase where they love it, and maybe they always will be. And so if we truly believe that we know how they feel and they don't know how we feel, then we should be extending a lot more patience and grace to them than I think that we sometimes are. The way that I acted for a lot of my friends and my family when I first left the church. I think if I still acted that way, I wouldn't ever be bringing anybody to my side of the argument. And I'm speaking in terms of sides and arguments, but I don't see it that way anymore. It's just the easiest way that I can express it. My most important thing is that people do what they think works for them. And if Mormonism works for you, then I think you should stay Mormon. And if Mormonism doesn't work for you, then I think that you should leave. But if you change your mind, I'm on your team again. I have friends who I want them to stay in the church forever. My parents, I want them to stay in the church forever. Would it be, maybe it would be nice, like to not feel like I'm disappointing them. I would like that to go away. But I think they need it. And so I want them to have it. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're in that stage of ex-Mormonism where you're always angry, find a healthy way that you can work through that. There's nothing wrong with anger. Sometimes it just sticks around longer than you'd like it to. But the way that I have conversations with my friends now, like the other day me and my friend were having a conversation, super active friend, probably my most active friend. And we were talking about the abuse scandal that happened in Arizona, and how the legal team on that phone line that the bishop made, how it seemed to me like they could be doing more to stop abuse from happening. And what he said was, in general conference, Nelson spoke very sternly against abuse and said that there's no place for that in our church. And I, in my older days, I maybe would have said, yeah, well, that's not enough. Or like I would have been, he didn't say it well enough, or he wasn't forceful enough, or, well, he's a liar. Like I would have come up with some excuse, where I think the thing that we both ended up agreeing on was the point where I said, I'm so happy that he said that. And I hope that he I hope that he keeps saying things like that. And I also wish, and I also hope that the advice that these bishops get from that phone line start to reflect that stronger as well. And all I did was say it like that. And we both agreed. And I imagine that I'm slowly, when I treat the people who I care about, who are still very Mormon like that, I don't do it because I want them to come over to the ex-Mormon side one day. Although if they ever choose to do that, I'm on their team. I do it to show them that I'm still the same exact person that I always was. I'm very reasonable, pretty much a moderate across the board. And I just want people to be happy and safe. So, that was my message to you ex-Mormons, and take that however you want to take it. Twist my words out of context if you want. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. Yeah. It seems to me that human beings, if we really are just valuing the same 5 things on different levels, if we were just placing them in different orders on our hierarchies of morality, then it shouldn't be as hard as it is to get to common ground with one another. And so that's where the roaches become an interesting thought to me, is What information are we overlaying onto the people who we consider to be our enemy that is not allowing us to have fruitful discussions with them? Like, when I was a Mormon, when I was an active Mormon, I didn't refer to people who left the church as ex-Mormons. I referred to them as anti-Mormons. That sets me up so much more on the defensive that I'm no longer able to see these people as just people who were once in my shoes who have now gone a different way, because I'm now seeing them as my active antagonist. Now, on the flip side, the first few years after I left the church, I couldn't help but see people who were still active Mormons as people who were just ridiculously naive. People who cared way more about their feelings than the logical part of their brains. And in a way, I guess I was also dehumanizing them on that front. Something that I've learned in my very short life is that people will see you the way that they want to see you, no matter what information is available that could change their mind. If somebody is determined to see you as the villain, or if you are determined to see somebody else as the villain, or to see yourself as the hero, sometimes that's necessary because it holds your worldview together. And if there's anything that I've learned leaving a religion like Mormonism and now being where I am, is that there's actually nothing more painful than your worldview coming apart. And so sometimes maybe it's easier to dehumanize somebody than it is to look in the mirror. All right. That video is over. It's as good as I can make it. It may not be amazing, but it's as good as I can make it. So if you watched all the way till this point, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you took something from it. Share it with a friend. Tell somebody about it if you felt like it made an impact on the way you think or anything like that. And yeah, if you have any major disagreements with me or think I'm a terrible person, then put it in the comments, and please be polite and I will read them. Yeah. Have a good day, everybody. Be nice to each other.